He is the Athletics NFL draft analyst. He just released The Beast, his annual draft guide. Dane Brugler. Dane, how you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you, Jason?
I'm excellent. I'm fired up because, holy cow, you got some hot... Now, I don't know if they're hot takes because you watch way more film than anybody. But let's start at the top. Cam Ward almost certainly will go 1 to Tennessee. But do you believe he's the best player in this draft?
Best player? Not necessarily. But you can understand why the Titans have come to the conclusion that this is their best route to go. Because if it's not Cam Ward, what is their avenue to a quarterback? And so with the improvements that Cam Ward has made year over year, because let's remember, he was a wing T quarterback in high school, what he did at Incarnate Word, and then Washington State, and then this past year at Miami, he got better year over year. 56.1% of his completions this year were over 10 yards. He has the arm. He has the elusiveness in the pocket, so he can create time for himself, go make plays down the field. So a lot of what you want in an NFL quarterback, Cam Ward offers. And he's still just 22 years old. So you think about by the time he's 24, 25, if he continues to grow at this trajectory, I think you're feeling pretty positive about the return on investment by taking him number 1. Because if he didn't go number 1, I promise you he would go number 2 to Cleveland or number 3 to the Giants. So you can understand where the Titans come to the conclusion that Cam Ward is their guy.
Yeah, I agree with most of that. I guess the one thing I'm struggling with him, whether it's the frame, the fleet of foot in the pocket, the art where he's releasing the football. I don't have a great NFL comp for him. Who does he remind you of as an NFL quarterback?
He reminds me of a taller, not as fast version of Kyler Murray. Because you see all the different arm angles. You see him win in structure, but also out of the pocket. His ability to create and move is a big part of that. But you know, we were talking about quarterbacks in the NFL draft. It's almost like you're making a bet, right? I mean, you're making a bet that this guy can be a top 15 quarterback in the NFL. And I think for most teams, they see Cam Ward as a guy that can be maybe a top 12, top 14 quarterback, because that's what you're looking for. The goal shouldn't be to find the next Patrick Mahomes. The goal should be, hey, let's find a guy that's going to help us compete and help us get to the playoffs. Because once you get in the playoffs, anything is possible. And I think a lot of teams believe Cam Ward can be that guy.
So the Browns are at 2, and about 2 minutes ago, you were like, hey, if Cam Ward fell to 2, perfect fit for the Browns. So let me ask you, Browns quarterback situation is murky. I know there's Kirk Cousins possibly waiting in the wings, but why wouldn't they just go get Shadeur Sanders? Isn't Stefanski such a good offensive mind that whoever he gets is going to work?
And that's going to be the big question. Where does Shedeur land? Is it number 2 to the Browns, number 3 to the Giants, or does he fall? And look, my evaluation of Shedeur has been pretty consistent since the season. I think he's a late 1, early 2. I think for whatever reason, it's become you have to love or hate Shedeur, yes. And it's okay to just like him. And that's where I'm at with him, where I think he can be an NFL starter. He's smart, he's tough, he's poised. He's accurate, maybe not as accurate as 74% completions would lead you to believe. 28% of those completions are screen passes. So that's a big part of what inflated that completion percentage. But I wonder about the way he likes to play. Does he have the physical traits to get away with that in the NFL? I mean, the offensive line was bad. There's no question about it at Colorado. But there are a lot of times where he is running himself into sacks and he's not making the right decision from the pocket. And so there's things about his profile that really, I think he can start in the NFL, but is he really going to uplift everybody around me and carry a franchise? That's my hang up where, okay, I like him. I think he can start, but am I taking him top 5 overall? Because it's not just about if you miss on him, it's a top 5 pick. It's, okay, you're passing on Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, one of these guys in the top 5. So I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking mid-first round, maybe even in the 20s, and Shadur Sanders is still available.
So last year you had Penix as your 52nd best player, Bo Nix as 44th, and you have Sanders, Shedeur at 34. Those two guys went top 10. Is there a world where Sanders still goes top 10, or you think that ship has sailed?
Oh, no, there's certainly a possibility because, again, he can be an NFL starter, and we know there's plenty of teams out there desperate for quarterbacks. And, it's always tough when you do it year to year like that because last year's draft was a much better draft in terms of overall talent. So in this class, those two guys, Penix, Bo Nix, they would have been a little bit higher than even Shedeur is in this year's draft. And so, that's kind of messes with the rankings a little bit. But, I understand why a team is going to look at Shedeur and say, you know what, maybe he's not check every box for us, but hey, we need a starter. He can let's roll the dice on him. And so the Browns at 2, the Giants at 3, the Saints at 9. If I have to make a bet today, I say he gets through those 3 spots and he's outside the top 10. But, we'll have to see what draft day comes.
How much of this has to do with Deion and all the noise and the chatter that's been around him and Shedeur all season? I mean, Dane, I got to be honest. I haven't heard anything about Cam Ward's parents. I don't know who they are. I don't know much about him at all. I feel like Shedeur is just in our face all the time, and so is Deion.
Well, that's why I have the Beast, right? So you can look up and it tells you exactly what Cam Ward's parents do for a living and all about his background and all of that. But it's obviously unique, right? How many quarterback prospects have we talked about where a dad is a high-profile athlete and coach like Deion is? At the end of the day, I don't think it's going to matter all that much. I think, there's been a lot talked about and said about Shedeur, and, maybe he's too brash for some teams. Maybe he doesn't fit with, the culture they're trying to build. Look, at the end of the day, teams want winners. Teams, and you think about what happened at Colorado the last 2 years, they were 1-11 in 2022. And then the last 2 years with Deion and Shedeur there, they went 13-11, so above 500. That's not easy to do. And so at the end of the day, the NFL, they want winners, and I think that will trump everything. And so when you look at Shedeur, I don't think the Deion thing is really going to factor in.
Interesting. One last level on Deion. So I thought I had read that Shadeur's offensive coordinator was his dad, like in high school, and then they go to college and they were together, and then they go to Colorado and they're together. I believe he's been under the thumb of his dad for something like the last 5 or 6 years of football, maybe going back to youth football. You would know. Does that matter? Because as a GM saying, man, if I draft this guy, I know his dad wants his job in 2 years.
Yeah, I think Deion is happy with where he's at Colorado. Now, if Shedeur is drafted by the Giants and things don't go great this year and they clean house, you can bet all we're going to hear about is Deion to the Giants. But, I think if you're a GM, you need to be doing what you think is best. You can't really be thinking about, all right, what's 2025 and 26 and 27. Just draft the best quarterback. And if you believe that's Shedeur, then I think you have to do it. I just think when we keep it to the field and on the field, I think there are enough question marks with him that I think teams are going to look at it and say, look, let's get Travis Hunter. Let's get Abdul Carter. Let's get Will Campbell, our left tackle. And, let's look at our other quarterback options, because this is the first year since 2008 we don't have a third-year junior at the quarterback position. It's just a really unique quarterback class. We've got 2 juniors, 2 underclassmen, but Jalen Milroe, Quinn Ewers are both 4-year guys. So this is just all around a really unique class.
All right, Dane, let me ask you about Jalen Milroe. So he's had his highs. Obviously, that Georgia game, he looked phenomenal. And his lows, the Oklahoma game, just burned the tape. A lot of questions comparing him to Anthony Richardson, which is not a good thing. I don't know. Is it crazy to say I remember college Lamar at Louisville? And I'm just Jalen looks similar to him. It could just be that they're skinny, tall, fast dudes. I don't know. Do you like Milroe or not?
I mean, I do like him. I would love to draft him on day 2 and develop him. But what's the price tag going to be? Do I have to draft him in the top 40 in order to get him? That might be a little bit too early for me, but he's an exciting player. So I think you can understand why a team would come to the conclusion that, hey, let's bet on a guy that has 4.3 speed. He's a decent sized player. I mean, he is thick. He's 215 pounds at just over 6 foot. So he has almost like a running back build to him, and he has a really strong arm. And you set it up perfectly. You watch the Georgia game, you watch the Wisconsin game, and it's like, okay, I'm all in. Let's work with this guy. But then you watch Michigan, you watch Oklahoma, and it's like, okay, his feel from the pocket needs a lot of work. And it's funny you bring up Lamar, because this year for Milroe, 12 of his rushing touchdowns were 10+ yards. That's the most by a quarterback over the last 25 years. The only one that came close was Lamar back in 2017. He had 11. So Jalen Milroe, explosive athlete with his legs. And he's also explosive with his arm. He had 16 passing touchdowns this year. They averaged 33.6 yards per touchdown. So this guy explosive with his legs, explosive through the air. And he's a winner. He was 21-6 in his 27 starts at Alabama. He won the academic Heisman. The comp that I keep coming back to is Jalen Hurts. One of the few second-round picks that has actually panned out. Jalen Milroe is kind of like a rocket-fueled version of Jalen Hurts, where we have to remember Hurts coming out of college was a little bit raw, and it's going to take time. And there were a lot of bumps along the road with the Eagles before he became the Jalen Milroe we're talking about now as a Super Bowl champion. So with Milroe, if a team can be patient with him, they might have something in 2-3 years. But what's that price tag going to be where you have to draft him? That's kind of where teams are split on Jalen Milroe.
So the one I keep coming back to is when the Packers had Rodgers, who had won, I think, 2 MVPs, and they went and got Jordan Love. And I'm sure you remember Jordan Love coming out, interception prone, but some of the traits were there. And the Packers took him, and Rodgers was ticked off. Can you see a scenario where, say, the Rams, who have had to deal with Matthew Stafford contract squabbles the last 2 off seasons, and the Rams say, you know what, let's just get our guy Milroe, McVay, whoever McVay touches turns to gold. He resurrects careers. Can you see a scenario where Milroe sneaks into the first round?
I think it's possible. If I'm a betting guy, I would say there's a better chance he goes round 2. But sure, you could see an avenue where he goes round 1. Right now, the over-under on quarterbacks in the first round is 2.5. I'm taking the over on that. And it's not necessarily Milroe, but Jackson Dart from Ole Miss.
Oh.
There are a lot of Tyler Shuck fans around the NFL. The quarterback from Louisville, 7th-year senior. He's going to be a 26-year-old rookie. Teams really like Tyler Shuck. And so there's a chance all 5 of these quarterbacks, talking about Cam Ward, Shadeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, Tyler Shuck, and Jalen Milroe, there's a good chance all 5 of those are off the board in the top 50 to 60 picks. But how many will sneak into the first round? I think the Steelers are a possibility. The Rams are a possibility. And then we have to talk about the Browns and the Giants. If they pass at 2 and 3, we could easily see them move up from those early picks in the second round into that late first to get one of these guys. I think that if I had a bet right now, 2 weeks from the draft, I think that's probably the most likely outcome.
Interesting. Well, we could close out on Jackson Dart. And, us college football fans, we see, okay, system, Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss. That's Matt Corral, a white guy who's good. I don't know about this Jackson Dart hype now. I just remember watching the season, and I was like, okay, he's good. Tyler Shuck, by the way, I don't remember anything impressive from him during the season. But again, you're watching the tape and every single snap. Are you really that high on Dart and Shuck?
The 2 guys that I would love to draft on day 2, kind of like Milroe. But we know in the NFL and with the draft, there's a quarterback bump. There's a quarterback tax where you have to draft them 20, 25 picks earlier than probably you want to, just because there's so many other teams competing for these playoffs or for these quarterbacks. And exactly, we're talking about that Ole Miss offense. I came away more impressed with Lane Kiffin and the way he sets up his offense and calls the plays than I did with the quarterback. And that's not really a knock on Jackson Dart. It's just, it's such a scheme or quarterback friendly scheme that it really makes things easy for him. 53% of his snaps were play action, a lot of screens, a lot of one read. Okay, it's not there. Boom, I'm going to take off and use my legs and get 6 yards. And you know what? That works at the college level.
Yeah.
But he's going to be asked to do so much more at the NFL level than he was asked to do in college. And so I think he has the physical traits for it. And teams and his teammates as well rave about the intangibles, the competitiveness with Jackson Dart. So I think that those intangibles will help him throughout the process. But at the end of the day, does he have how long is it going to take before he can get on the field?
Yeah.
I think it's going to take some development time. And then with Tyler Shuck, he's 26-year-old rookie, 7th-year senior, not ideal. This past year at Louisville was the first time in those 7 years he played more than 8 games because of injuries. But he's 6'4", 230 pounds, a twitchy arm. He has a really explosive down the field. And he was actually the number 2 recruit for Oregon way back in the day behind Penei Sewell. So he's been in college football a long time. But if not for the age and the medical concerns, we'd be talking about Tyler Shuck as a top 25 pick.
Smells like Brandon Whedon. I don't know if you remember that name from back in the day. Last one, I forgot. Abdul Carter. So there was a report that came out, and I know as we get close to the draft, you get a lot of negative stuff about his work habits at Penn State. and then you couple that with the injury and the surgery, and you're like, is there a world where Abdul Carter maybe slides to say 5 as opposed to 2 or 3?
That sounds like the team at 5 really hoping that happens. I'd be pretty shocked. I think there's a good chance we see Cam Ward go 1, Travis Hunter go 2 to the Browns, and then Abdul Carter 3 to the Giants. Abdul Carter actually, I believe, in New York today, meeting with the Giants, who don't really have a need at pass rush.
Yeah.
They paid Burns last year. They still have Kayvon Thibodeau. But when you're drafting that high, you want to draft players, not positions. You want the impact guys. And so with Abdul Carter, watching him, what he did against Notre Dame in the playoff game with a bum shoulder and still they couldn't block him, that's the type of guy you want to go after. And so I think that if the Patriots sitting there at 4 and Abdul Carter still on the board, they will be ecstatic. I just don't think he gets out of the top 3 when it's all said and done.
Sounds about right. Dane Brugler, the Beast. You got to check that out. Oh, he's dominating over The Athletic. Great stuff, Dane. Thanks for a great 15 minutes of NFL draft stuff. Love it.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks, Jason.
No problem. Coming up next, the Joker speaks.